United Church, I'm Lamar.
And I'm Cedar.
And we have a favor to ask of you.
As you all know, in these past few weeks, systemic racism in our country has been brought into the spotlight, sparked by the murders of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and many others. As we all process these events, we encourage you to take action for justice rather than pray for peace. In the words of Reverend Jim Bear Jacobs, outlines why. In his open letter to white clergy, he writes, "Your desire in law and order may seem peace to you, but it is definitely not peace for our communities of color." Later he writes, "When white people cry for peace, it is too often an appeal to silence black anger and to make room for white comfort. We don't need peace. We don't need things to return to normal. Normal is what got us here."
As the United Church, we want to do our part as individuals and as a community to make Two Harbors a welcoming place for people of all skin colors. We strongly encourage you to stop by the church, pick up a yard sign, and put it in your yard. One of the signs says, "There is no peace without justice," and the other says, "Lord, empower us to pursue justice." We also encourage you to donate to campaigns such as Black Lives Matter or the Equal Justice Initiative. If you are unable to donate, a good way to contribute is by signing petitions and making calls to your political leaders.
As white people, it is our duty to amplify black voices and to be allies to people of color. Please take action. Thank you, and we hope to see you all soon.
Bye.
This is Copper.
This is Darwin. He's a skipper key.
We don't know what breed she is.
And can you say who you are?
I'm Sophia.
And I'm Padme.
Welcome to the United Church of Two Harbors. I am Paula Gaboury. I'm the pastor here, and I am so incredibly glad that you have all joined us today in worship. So God has created us as we bring our full selves, as we gather here in our simplicity, in our complexities, in our joys and our sadnesses and our hopes and our fears, and in the midst of our own stories. We find a place in God's story, a God who welcomes all people, a God who loves all people without condition. So, come, let's worship. Please join me in our call to worship. It's a responsive reading today. I will read the words with the light print, and please join in with the words that are in bold print. In the midst of fear and anger, in the midst of mayhem and destruction, God calls us.
With everything else going on, who has time for a feast? We're busy. We'll get around to eating eventually.
In the midst of our anxiety, our worry, in the midst of bill paying and appointments, God invites us.
We are tempted to just grab a bite, a sandwich between errands, a snack we can eat while driving or checking email or working on today's big project.
The feast is spread. All are invited and all are welcome.
We are invited, we are welcome, we are worthy. How will we respond?
Good Sunday morning, United Church. So this week I have a message that was actually given to me and I thought it was really appropriate. And I also read a story that kind of goes with it. So here goes. I'm going to read the story. It says, "Good morning. I want to tell you a special story. God gave a party. God invited the strongest, the wealthiest, the smartest, the leaders of the community. But they could not come. They had other things to do than to come to God's party. So God sent out his messengers, but this time they were instructed to invite anyone who would come. This meant those who were not the strongest or the richest or the smartest or the leaders in the community, although God's invitation remained open to them also. And these people, the second ones invited, came to the party. They were excited that God had invited them, and they wanted to see and hear about God's plans. Well, the party was a huge success. The people left the party knowing that God really cared about them and wanted them to help spread the word of God's love. They were happy to do this, and many of them gave their lives so that others could hear the same good news. Nice story, huh? God calls each one of us. God invites each one to be part of God's group of friends who will care for creation and for each other. In preparation, God has given each of us special gifts, special talents, and ways that we can be helpful. You are called. Many of you don't know yet what your special gift or talent is, but God will reveal it to you when you are ready. I invite you to be ready for God's party of service by learning as much as you can about God's world and about helping others. That's the good news today. God loves you always. And I just want to let you know, even adults have sometimes to worry and think about things that are going to change in their lives. But if you follow God's plan and be whatever you want to be and do the best you can, you will find a way. All right, that's our message for today. Talk to you guys next week. See you then. Bye.
Hi, this is Madeline, and I'm going to be reading Matthew 22, verses 1 through 14. The Message. The story of the wedding banquet. Jesus responded by telling still more stories. God's kingdom, he said. It is a king who threw a wedding banquet for his son. He sent out servants to call all the invited guests, and they wouldn't come. He sent out another round of servants, instructing them all to tell the guests, "Look, everything is on the table. The prime is ready for carving. Come to the feast." They only shrugged their shoulders and went off, one to weed his garden, another to work in his shop, the rest, with nothing better to do, beat up on the messengers and then killed them. The king was outraged. He sent his soldiers, destroyed those thugs, and leveled their city. Then he told his servants, "We have a wedding banquet, all the prepared, but no guests. The ones I invited weren't up to it. Go out to the busiest intersections in town and invite everyone you find to the banquet." The servants went out on the streets and rounded up everyone they laid eyes on, good and bad, regardless. And so the banquet was on, every place filled. When the king entered and looked over the scene, he spotted a man who wasn't properly dressed. He said to him, "Friend, how dare you come looking like that?" The man was speechless. The king told his servants, "Get him out of here. Fast, tie him up and ship him to hell. And make sure he doesn't get back in." That's what I mean when I say many get invited, only a few make it. And there's the reading.
You know what? If I had been one of Jesus's original disciples, I have to admit that I would have been really uncomfortable during some of the situations that Jesus had put himself in. And I'm not talking about Jesus's teachings and preachings. No, I would be like Martha's sister Mary, sitting at the feet of Jesus, gazing up at his face and taking in every single word he would say. And I'm not talking about Jesus's healing or his miracle ministries. I would be right on the sidelines cheering Jesus on every single time. Now, what would make me uncomfortable are all those parties that Jesus puts himself into. Jesus went to so many parties, and he told so many stories about parties. Now, I really do appreciate a good party, and yet I really need to pace myself in the number of parties that I actually attend. And don't get me wrong, no, it's not that I don't love a good time. I do, I really do. It's just that I can take only so much organized fun and frivolity, especially in large groups. I really do best in small group settings. I just can't fathom how Jesus was able to tolerate all those large, ruckus groups. And I absolutely can appreciate the sense of overflowing joy that is at the heart of Jesus's party parables, though. They illustrate that our gospel is indeed good news. Now, one of those party parables, well, it took a peculiar turn, however. Just when Jesus brings us to the point where the jazz combo is warming up and the music's starting and we're making our way to that groaning table full of food, he shows at the end of this story the host getting downright nasty. Now let me tell you about what happened. The kingdom of heaven, Jesus said, is like a king who was giving a wedding banquet for his son. We can see from the outset of this story that this is a huge deal. After all, no social event could be any bigger than a wedding banquet for the king's son. So following social protocol, the king had sent out the save the date invitations, and when the day drew near, he sent out his messengers to announce to the people that he had invited that it's time to start making your way to the castle. But those messengers were ignored. So he sent more messengers out, and this time there was a sense of urgency. His guests really needed to get themselves motivated and get to the banquet. Now it's at this point in the story that we realize that Jesus is describing quite an irrational situation. This parable could have been classified as a comedy of the absurd. This king, who was being treated as though he were the host that people want to avoid the most. But remember, this is no ordinary household that's celebrating a son's wedding. This is the king. And the king is being made to look like a comic book character. And to make the situation even more absurd, Jesus notes that those who were invited, well, they made light of it. Some chose to go to their farms, others to businesses, and some who were emboldened by the king's apparent helplessness, well, they mistreated those messengers who had delivered the invitations. It seems as though there are two directions this parable takes. First, the parable describes the historic relationship between God and the people of Israel. And Israel had been invited to God's kingdom by the prophets. And the prophets were portrayed in this parable as the servants. But Israel had been quite casual about their response. Sometimes, in fact, the response had been quite vicious. The nation's failure reflected especially upon her religious leadership. Now, this parable seems aimed especially at the chief priests and the Pharisees, who were becoming increasingly antagonistic toward Jesus. And those were the very ones who should have seen to it that the nation was ready for that wedding feast. And yet this parable speaks to the church as well. For the past 2,000 years, God has looked to the church to do for the world what Israel had been called to do, which was to prepare the world for God's gracious rule. It has been our business to make ourselves and our culture ready for the kingdom of Christ. We haven't really done a very good job of that, though. Like Israel, we've been pretty casual about God's invitation. It isn't enough that the secular culture has made martyrs of those who had tried. Actually, Christians have sometimes gotten into the martyring business as well. Just look at the Crusades or the Reformation. So for the most part, God's banquet continues to be poorly attended. Meanwhile, God has continued to recruit for the kingdom party. So when Israel was slow to accept God's invitations, God turned to the new body, the church. As we look back on church history, we get the impression that God is constantly forced to reach beyond those who were first invited to the party. In other words, the church is constantly in need of renewal. We Christians seem to quickly become complacent, and we're quite content to limit the party to our own kind. So a constant reforming and renewal has been going on even to this very day. In other words, God is going to have the party whether or not we have the sense to accept the invitation to come and join the celebration. Now there's the last part of Jesus' parable. And that's the part that I particularly want to discuss with you. When the party is in full swing and there's joy abounding everywhere, the king notices a man who's not wearing a wedding robe. And that's when the mood changes drastically. The king asks, "Friend, how did you get in here without a wedding robe?" Well, the man, he's struck speechless. The king then orders that the man be bound hand and foot and thrown out into the outer darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Earlier in the story, the king was so anxious for a party that he not only enlarged the guest list, he all but forced people to come. How is it then that this generous host has now become a vindictive enforcer of a dress code? The staff who were once out in the streets begging people to come to the party are now called to throw out a guest. The difference in the king's attitude is shocking. In truth, I thought that the king didn't care who came to the party, that he was only looking for people to fill the seats at his banquet table. So what is the meaning of this bizarre turn of events? Well, friends, here's the truth of this parable. Those who came to the party, they got there by grace. The king instructed his employees to go into the main streets and go invite everyone that you find. Then we read that those who were gathered together for the grand occasion were both good and bad. You see, this gathering was not a select group of hand-picked people. Rather, the king's net had been cast out and had drawn in people indiscriminately. People didn't qualify for the invitation. The invitation qualified them. The thing is, though, that grace has a hidden risk. By definition, grace is undeserved favor. But we humans, we find it really difficult to see any favor as undeserved. There's something in us that insists on believing there must be some merit in us that has brought about the favor that we've received. And while most of us would at least be careful not to verbalize such a feeling out loud, we might easily make an unspoken expression of that feeling by becoming presumptuous. When we presume, that's when we take something for granted. When we get too comfortable in a relationship, at times we start to make assumptions about what the other people or person wants and needs. It can be that way in our relationship with God, too. Maybe we start taking God for granted. And this can be especially so when God shows us the unmerited favor of grace. We are all too likely to think that we have some special appeal to God, or else why would God be so good to us? That makes me wonder if this guest had taken his invitation for granted. Since the invitation had been so insistent, did he figure that he must be so very special? In that case, he may have thought, why worry about a wardrobe? Surely the king would accept him no matter what he wore. Well, truth be told, it was kind of arrogant of that man to come to the king's banquet improperly dressed. That man, it seemed, thought that the rules didn't apply to him. And it's a danger that we all are vulnerable to. We can all lose the sense of God's authority, or the holiness of the Bible, or the true meaning of communion, or the power of rituals. It all becomes so commonplace that without our knowing it, we take the mystery of God for granted and we become presumptuous. When we hear in churches, it's always been done this way. That's how a presumption develops subtly and yet all too easily. Now, if I've learned anything from this pandemic, it's that what we are doing now has not ever been done before. And even though it's painful to be physically apart from each other, we're finding new ways to connect and to reach out to others. The guest in this parable knew better than to dress as he did. And yet, the garments of presumption have no place in grace. The fact is that God's love is beyond our ability to understand. So let's never take God's grace for granted. Amen. Our song of response is, Lord, you have come to the lakeshore. Let's pray. Gracious and loving God, we come to you in freedom, free from our bondage to sin, yet still struggling to follow you rather than our own desires. Free to choose our own paths, yet bound to you through love and grace. Free to be individuals created in your image, yet deeply connected to our sisters and brothers. A global community that reflects your communal nature. We come to you freely, dear God, out of love and devotion, not compulsion or force. And in so doing, we discover the paradox of the gospel, that our truest freedom is found in service, that our truest selves emerge through selflessness. God of all wisdom, on this week that we celebrate our nation's birth, struggles to recall what it is to make us good. When it comes to matters of our politics, it's painfully clear that we are a divided nation. Help us to seek and to find a unity that transcends our divisions. Bind us together by our call to serve the common good of all your children. Forgive our pride and conceit, and help us to live with humility and charity and understanding. Forgive our greed and abuse of power, and remind us that true power is found in service and sacrifice. Forgive our failures and sins, and inspire us to seek justice, peace, equality, and prosperity for all. Remind us, O God, of who we are and who you call us to be. Remind us that our first calling is to you. Teach us again the ways of Christ and fill us with your Spirit that we might follow the path to promote true freedom and liberty, to act with grace and mercy and humility, to eat and talk and live with sinners and outcasts, to walk with the lonely and comfort those who grieve, to care for those who are sick and dying, to provide for the poor and the needy, to seek justice and end oppression, to proclaim the good news of your reign in all that we say and all that we are. Today we lift up the Balsness family who has been touched directly with COVID-19. Lord, in your mercy,
Hear our prayer.
we pray for Nancy and all who are navigating that cancer journey. Lord, in your mercy,
Hear our prayer.
we pray for all who are struggling during this time of civil unrest and of social isolation and of intense feelings with all that's happening now, both personally and socially. Lord, in your mercy.
Hear our prayer.
And now with one voice, as one people, we pray for your reign, O God, in the words that Christ taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sin against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen. Because God has given us a great banquet, let our thanksgiving overflow with joyous giving for the sake of others. Please take this time to put an offering into an envelope and send it to the United Church of Two Harbors, or go to our website and click on the donate button. join me in our offering prayer. God of grace, it is our delight and our pleasure to give these gifts to you. All we are and all that we have are yours alone. Accepting this offering as a token of our abiding love. Use it to bring justice and peace and comfort to all the world. Amen. I do have one announcement today, and that is next week we're going to have a little bit of a different flavor to the service. The 9 United Methodist churches in the Twin Ports area are putting together a service of lay people in each congregation. So all 9 churches will have a representative from each of their churches participating in this service that you'll be able to watch on YouTube next Sunday. So I hope you enjoy, and also I hope that you have a safe and happy Independence Day celebration. So now, it's all about choices, right? So what are you going to choose? This answer can make all the difference in your life. Go now in peace. Our sending song is Song of Hope.